Welcome, readers. Today on Book Chat, we're discussing the second book in our fantasy series read-along, Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness. Stay tuned. Today's episode is sponsored in part by audiobooks.com. Audiobooks.com now has 175,000 titles and 1.2 million podcasts. New customers get 3 free audiobooks comprised of 1 premium credit and 2 VIP titles. Use our promo code Shelf Addiction, spelled as one word, when you sign up at audiobooks.com. Again, our promo code is Shelf Addiction. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Tamara Ford, and welcome to Book Chat here on the Shelf Addiction Podcast. Participate in this book discussion by joining the Facebook group Shelf Addiction Official. Talk about the series with us there, as well as other bookish topics. I hope to hear your thoughts on this book discussion. As always, you can find the 3 of us on Twitter and Instagram. The links for everything are below in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, please support this podcast by sharing it with some book nerd friends or on your favorite social media space. That would really help me out, and I appreciate you for doing so. The uncut video version of this podcast is available now on Patreon. Join us there for exclusive videos, including this podcast after show. We get even more candid with what we have to say. So if you're interested in that at all, you'll need to come on over to Patreon and sign up. Before we get started, I have to issue a spoiler warning. This is a roundtable book discussion, so nothing is off limits. You've been warned. Welcome back to another 3 Book Blogger, 1 Series read-along discussion, and today we are talking about the second book in our read-along of All Souls Trilogy by Deborah Harkness. Joining me is the 3 Bloggers, 1 Series read-along co-host, Nicola. Welcome back, Nicola.
Hey, everybody.
Hey. So before we jump in, I'm going to run down the book stats and then Nicola will give us the synopsis. So Shadow of Night is the title of the book. Hardcover comes in at 584 pages. Unabridged audio is 24 hours and 25 minutes. Narrated by Jennifer Akita, or Akita, not sure which way. It was published July 12th, 2012 by Viking Adult and Penguin Audio. So let's go ahead and try to remember what this book is about.
Okay, the synopsis from Amazon reads, only a few writers capture the imagination the way Deborah Harkness has with her New York Times best-selling All Souls trilogy. A Discovery of Witches introduces reluctant witch Diana Bishop, vampire geneticist Matthew Claremont, and the battle for a lost, enchanted manuscript known as Ashmole 782. Picking up from A Discovery of Witches' cliffhanger ending, Shadow of Night takes Diana and Matthew on a trip through time to Elizabethan London, where they are plunged into a world of spies, magic, and a coterie of Matthew's old friends, the School of Night. As the search... Oh, wow, this kind of cuts off.
Yikes.
Yeah, it says, as the search for Ashmole 782 deepens, and then it doesn't go on. But
oh, no!
That's kind of strange. But they search for the book. They meet royalty in a few different locations, and they get pulled into politics, both mundane and paranormal. So I guess I made that last part up. So
sounds good to me. Good job. All right. So like it says, we jump right in basically. And here we are in 1590. Fun times.
Mm-hmm.
Where I did really enjoy the history part of this book, even though historical fiction is not my go-to. I had a good time with it anyway. Did you like some of the historical aspects?
I did. I felt, I enjoyed her the way she enjoyed it, because she is a historian, and this is one of her specialty eras, I think. And so I just liked the way she experienced it. So that was fun. I liked in historical fiction, when they include or they novelize real historical figures, I always enjoy what kind of personality the author. Well, I guess I should say that's the part that's enjoyable in a good historical fiction, when the author overlays a persona or personality on top of real historical figures. So I enjoyed that quite a lot with Kit Marlowe and some of the other figures, Sir Walter Raleigh. And
Yeah. I mean, seeing it through Diana's eyes of being so excited to be meeting all these people, I guess in turn made me excited because I mean, I never had Shakespeare on my wish list to meet if I could, you know what I mean? But
and we kind of don't excited. Really. Yeah. He's referred to a few times, but he doesn't get hardly any page time, which I thought was an interesting choice.
Yeah. He got some toward the end there, I think. But
at the very end, where it's implied that he got a bunch of ideas from Diana and Matthew's trip through time, or visit, I guess. So,
I mean, even at the end there, Diana is like kind of messing with history a little bit when it came to the telescope.
Yeah, I liked that.
Yeah.
And the modern day was like, people are not usually this meticulous about recording the date and time.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, it says 1592 on here or whatever it was. It's actually like, oh, okay. Like she tried, I guess she figured what the hell. And actually, I think Isabel pointed that out too at the end there. She was like, oh, they're coming back because
they
don't have anything to lose at this point.
Right.
So that's something she would do. So.
Yeah.
Which was interesting in itself, how they kind of kept track of them by trying to track the changes that popped up.
Historical anomalies.
Yes. Yeah. That was kind of cool. And it's like only vampires with a lot of money could go around trying to collect these things to keep a lid on what was happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, clearly the Claremonts have plenty. So,
yeah. I mean, they bought this, what was that, the paintings that Marcus bought? Or was it like some figurines he bought?
Those I thought it was those miniatures.
Yeah, that were way overpriced.
Yeah. But just to keep them off auction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Marcus and Isabeau bought those.
Mm-hmm. So. Which was interesting. I don't know. I just liked how we kind of got pieces of the present meshed with the past. I think that kept it grounded for me. It wasn't all like we didn't forget about the characters that we met in the other book, which is important.
Right. Yeah, and I think it was done really well. I've read books where that wasn't done well, and all it did was kind of kill the tension every time you switched, and when it's done well, it's a really good device to I don't even know, build tension, I guess. But I've read some books where they're switching between two different storylines or two different timelines, and it either gets super confusing or it's just, you kind of lose momentum in one by switching to the other one.
Yeah.
I didn't think that happened here. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. And no falling asleep at the end of the chapters.
Right.
So that was good. I mean, the transitions, I think, like you said, were very smooth. And this is jumping a little bit, but I'm very curious because in our last conversation, you said you liked the magic and you wanted more magic. Did you get more magic? Do you feel like it? Yes. Did you feel like it hit the spot?
Yes,
okay.
It did. And I really enjoyed the learning sessions she had with the witches in the 17th century, 16th century, in the 1600s, 1500s, 16th century, 1500s. Okay. Got it.
Yes.
I thought that was really well done. I liked how they introduced how the different witches saw different things in her and helped her with all those skills. The element of being a weaver which was very rare, and then that was why she couldn't cast other people's spells. I thought that's a bit of how do I put a bit of mythology that I've never run into before. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was really unique and smart to actually kind of explain that. But I did think it was kind of a teeny plot hole that, the fact that Sarah kept trying to make her learn these these spells. And if her parents suspected that she was a weaver, they could have saved her the heartache and said, look, they didn't have to tell that they bound her, but they could have said, we think she could be a weaver like me. He was a weaver. Her own dad had that same skill. And they never told their aunt, her aunt that was really close to the family. She could have been saved a whole bunch of heartache. I
guess it didn't really occur to me that her parents knew she was a weaver. I think that her parents knew that people were going to be after her, but I guess I didn't put those pieces together. I'm not saying you're wrong, but that didn't occur to me that was why.
Until the father came, until they met up and she had conversations with her father, which made me think, well, did he know the whole time she was a weaver? It didn't say that, I guess, outright that he knew the whole time.
Now I want to read it again.
Yeah, I felt like if he wasn't for sure, he definitely had the inkling that she could have been. I mean, they knew that she was a time walker early on when she disappeared on one of her, so why not that?
I don't know. I got the feeling that nobody in modern times really knew about weavers at all, but that might have been a conclusion I jumped to without the right, without it being in the page.
Well, they were definitely rare. I know they made it seem like the longer time went, the less and less of them there was, because even her teacher was a weaver, and she's like, oh, it's not that many.
I think she said that she's the only only other one she'd ever met, didn't she? I can't remember the witch's name.
It was
Good. Was that her last name?
Yeah, something Goody or Goody.
Because they used to use Goody as a title, like short for good woman.
Goody Alsop. Goody Alsop. There it is. Goody Alsop.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I liked her. I thought she was super cool. I liked her. Like, we learn about familiars, and Diana gets one, a really cool one.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, like a fire drake. I mean, a dragon. Come on, I would love that.
that lives inside you, kind of. And that's not the way I've seen familiars portrayed in any other fiction either. So that was also an interesting twist. It's usually some kind of animal, and or it's always in my reading. I don't think I've ever read it where it's anything other than some kind of semi-sentient animal, like a cat or an owl or something like that.
Yeah, because I mean, even her familiar, Goody's familiar, was like like an image or a second of her own self, like a duplicate,
like a ghost kind of. What is she? I want to say golem, but it wasn't a golem. It was something. A fetch. That's what they called
fetch.
it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it would go open the door, let people in, go make sure the husband stays asleep. I mean, all these random things.
Like it didn't seem like the fetch could speak, but it could like fool people for a little while. That'd be handy.
Don't ask too many questions.
Yeah, that would be handy to be able to be in two places at once.
Sit here and look like you're working. I'm going to go to the movies. It would be helpful.
Yeah, if you have to answer a question, say, let me take a note and I'll get back to you.
Exactly. I mean, even Diana's father had one. What was his? His was like some kind of bird. It was like...
I don't remember.
It was a hawk, not a hawk. It was some kind of bird, because they were talking about like when Diana took him to meet the witches, they saw his familiar and he was like, oh, you can see it?
It was like flying around with the fire drake.
Yeah. It was some kind of bird. I don't remember what kind of bird, but I'm like, well, he had one. So I wonder, do all witches have one? Did her mother have one?
Yeah, it seemed like they implied that all of them do, but maybe it was only weavers, because I don't know.
I don't know.
You're asking questions that didn't come up for me when I was reading.
See, I think about the random stuff. I'm like, I want to know, what about this? And I mean, because she had that fire drake when she was a child. and she didn't really even remember, almost seems like she had forgotten it or something. She seemed surprised to see it. Although then there was this story of when she was a child and she was talking about seeing a dragon that was inside
I was trying to search on familiar, and there's too many. That happens a lot in the book for ordinary reasons too, not just the witchy companion.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, she had one from a child, so I don't know. Maybe we'll know more about that as we go on, or maybe not. I don't know why that interests me so much, but it did.
It's cool, and it's used in different ways in different, by different authors, right? So, like Harry Potter, all the kids had a familiar, and they were occasional plot points, but a lot of it was about status in those books, right? So if you remember, like the Weasleys, who didn't have a lot of money, had kind of old, broken down familiars that were, passed along. And anyway, so that series had familiars. And the other one I'm thinking of is the Philip Pullman series, the Golden Compass. Which was a very different take on it, but still it was animals.
Right. And that one, though, it was different because it was like if you feel pain, they feel pain and all this other stuff. They were connected, I guess, in a different kind of way. Yeah. Interesting. So, I like that. I really liked, I think, to me, and we just got finished talking about her father, but I thought that was like the best scene. They're out there out and about, and Matthew's he just takes off after this guy because he can smell him. And her dad is just walking around.
One thing that we didn't mention during the bonus episode about the TV show is that they did kind of weave that into the first episode or the first book. The first season of the show, which was not there at all in the book, but I did like that there were those hints in the TV show about her dad being able to time walk. But that was one of the best things. I mean, I felt so happy that she got to talk to her father. It just made me happy.
I mean, with the, how her parents were killed and stuff, to see him and then beyond all that, get information from him, kind of exchanged without, but it was a delicate dance, right? She couldn't tell everything.
Right.
But just imagine, even after the fact, you're a time walker. You can go back and run into him again at another time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I really liked that bit. It makes me, and you've read the third book already. I have not, but it makes me wonder if, in the third book, she travels to, I guess if she traveled to when she was 6, she kind of jumps into her own body, right? So that would be weird.
Yeah, it would be. It totally would be. Because this is interesting how they played with that time here. In other things that I've read, they always say, oh, you can't speak to your other self. You can't run into your other self. But here, you actually displace your other self. So
right.
They're just gone for a while.
Yeah. Apparently, there is no, I mean, there is no other self. They're merged together for I don't know. It is really interesting. So,
which made it super easy for Matthew's friends to figure out what was going on, because the night he came back, he forgot details. He forgot where he was supposed to be.
He disappeared from some brothel or something, from his mistress's bed, basically. She's ghosts took him.
He totally forgot what was what. He forgot, the details were, devil in the details, and he missed some of those. So
yeah. I thought it was interesting that he was pretty prominent in politics at that time, right? He was a spy, and Queen Elizabeth was a bit dependent upon him for a few different things.
Pain management being one thing.
Yeah. So
torturing people.
Yeah.
He had all the fun jobs. I mean, and clearly when she was younger, they were hooking up. That was clear.
Right. So
I mean, he had his family's business of,
right.
their whole thing. And then he was like a double agent almost. It was like he had like a lot of things going on at once.
He had a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah, like see how do you align yourself properly when you're committed all these different ways?
Right. And when you have all that history behind you. But you can kind of see how he becomes reclusive over the centuries, right? And like, just leave me out of all that.
I would be too. Like, once I get out of it, don't ask me to do nothing. I'm not involved with these shenanigans anymore.
Yeah. So I did really enjoy the book.
Yeah, because I mean, when he goes back now, knowing what he knows now, then he's also made changes. So he has like tried to save witches and done other things that Matthew from that time would not have done.
Right, that was out of character for his original self.
Yeah.
So,
which was interesting. So I did like that, but although he did kind of slip into his old-fashioned ways a little bit, but I think Diana cracked the whip and kind of pulled him back in when he got a little too far off into that fiasco.
Yeah. Well, did you watch Outlander?
I did.
Or read it. That was one of the main conflicts between Claire and Jamie was, his perfectly well, and I can't say perfectly, but his behavior towards women, which was standard for the time, and her refusal to deal with it, right? And there were a few moments where she really had to bow to his to him, because if she hadn't, it could have like cost them their lives, right? Because he had to keep the loyalty of his men, and there were, I'm not articulating it very well, but that was one of the central conflicts, at least in the very first book.
Well, that does go on throughout this book again and again, where like between them in their house, obviously Diana says and does what the hell she wants to do. And it's very clear, because people will make comments and Matthew's like, whatever, basically, like, she gonna do what she gonna do. But out and about, when you don't know who's around or who's listening and all of this, she does kind of have to not bow down necessarily, but like appear more mild-mannered, I guess, than she would normally. But she does come for him after the fact. Like that one showdown they had. So after she lost the baby, she was pregnant, and then she had a miscarriage. But he was acting like funny about it. Like he had bad memories about having miscarriages, which he explains to her. But when enough was enough, he sent people off so they could have like this showdown kind of our conversation that could or could not end up in a screaming match. But she used her magic. She stopped him from leaving. She was like, hey, we gonna talk about this right now. What are you doing? She yanked him back. That's what I'm talking about. Like, he needed that, because he was going off the rails a little bit. Like, I know you're
and
old
probably
as dirt,
nobody's and probably nobody had ever really been able to do that with him, other than maybe his father, to sort of stop him from doing whatever he wanted, right?
Yeah. Because, I mean, he was just out all the time. The other witches were like, what's going on? Where's Matthew? What's going on with your husband? Like, I can't tell him what to do, but, like, dang. But she gets you right. She'll snap you up and have a conversation, which I like about Diana. So yeah, she is a feminist. She is not for the bullshit, but she will bend, and it's true. And I think, like, if you don't bend, sometimes just doesn't work, unfortunately. Sometimes you got to bend. Even me, I admit that.
Well, that is the essence of couplehood or partnership, I think, is knowing when to stand your ground and knowing when to, be flexible or to grant it to your partner.
Mm-hmm. Because you can't win all the time. I mean, you just can't. Even though if you feel like you're right and it's your win to have, sometimes it's in the best interest just to let them have it.
Well, and and if you did win all the time, would you like that?
I don't know.
Win all the time?
Yeah.
Would you want a partner that rolled over on everything?
Oh no. I mean, honestly, with the type of creature Matthew is, you're expecting a certain kind of man or creature, and if he turned into like this puppy dog, I think he wouldn't be that attractive to her anymore.
Well, I'm putting the question out there just generally. I don't think that anybody wants a partner that rolls over on everything. That's not a partner. That's a servant or or something. So
yeah, which is not fun. But we also got to meet Matthew's father, which I thought was an excellent character. Did you like Philip?
Oh, absolutely. He was wonderful. He was, he was very much larger than life, and, he has all this historical context, and he, pretty much rolled Matthew on his back and shook him like you would a puppy, And I feel like he's the only, creature, person, thing in the world that could really accomplish that. Maybe Isabeau, from a pure power perspective, but I don't know if that's not her style,
Yeah. So. And it's like, it didn't take long for Philip to figure out what Matthew's problem was. He's like, oh, he must have killed me because he's acting like he needs to be forgiven for something, or he's acting guilty, So he needs to get over this, like, now, if you guys are gonna.
Yeah, that was such I just loved that scene where Philip tells Matthew that he forgives him, and Matthew gets all emotional, and it was just really beautifully done.
It was. I mean, it was like, at first, like in the first book, I couldn't tell exactly what his problem was with Philip, because, it felt like there was something there when he talked about him. But I'm like, they seem like they have a really good relationship, although Philip can be very, I guess, overbearing. Yeah. But, I'm like, he probably learned it from him. So,
well, I hate to keep saying that's how things were, but because I don't know how things were, but the understanding we have of the nobility of the time is really that, what they said goes. They are the master of all they see. And I think that at least we in modern days expect people from that era to behave that way.
Mm-hmm. Although it's been said, Isabeau also checked Philip plenty of times.
Yeah.
Like, he can't run her over.
No, but she does it. One thing I really liked about Isabeau is that repeated way that Diana observes that she has this way of saying, of course, and she kind of looks down.
It's the tone.
But it's so perfectly neutral that you're like, oh, wait.
It's like she's not agreeing. She's like, sure, Matthew.
Yeah.
Like, she's, right. Like, okay, crazy. I'm not doing that, but she won't say it.
Okay, crazy.
Yeah. And that's something you probably learn over a very long period of time dealing with an overbearing husband. You're like, okay, sure.
And as a woman of the times where your options are limited, you can't come out in direct conflict. You go around the conflict, So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed how she notices that Matthew does it too, and she picks up the habit as well. And I really liked that little thread running through some of the interactions in the book.
Yeah, it's very cool. There was something else I wanted to say about that time, but it slipped my mind. about that time when they were together with the father. It'll come back to me. I don't know what it just kind of slipped away.
Fair enough.
Oh, the king. Lord, that crazy king.
Yeah, that was a freaky. That was like, I was alluding to that when I was talking about the royalty, the different kinds of royalty, and Elizabeth depending on him to do stuff. And boy, he was dangerous, right? That was kind of a very tense visit.
Yeah. And they only went there because they figured out the book was there. So they tried to get the book, and then they found out it was swapped or something. And then they were like, well, we have to go here. Well, and then, so it was some shenanigans going on to get them there. So the queen was like, you go there. And then she was going to force Diana to stay. And then, Yeah.
So there was someone in London that was supposed to have the book. They went to visit him, and they found out that somebody in this king, what was his name? I can't remember his name. So this other kingdom in his court had switched the books, and the London guy was very kind of droll about it. He's like, "Oh, that was a gift that I presume was left in exchange for one of my books that was borrowed."
Mm-hmm.
And so they needed to go get the book, or they're after the book, and so they wanted to go find this person in the other court, and then Elizabeth gets her panties in a twist because she wants that person from the court back in her court. So
Mm-hmm.
he's a demon, right? He's kind of this batshit crazy, brilliant, genius person.
Yeah.
And he's kind of gone over the edge by the time we see him. I think they do end up getting the book at the end, don't they?
They do. They do get it because remember they found out it was made of skin and blood and things like that, right? Yeah, and there were pages missing, obviously, because the crazy guy tore them out.
The 3 pages, I forget. There was a whole thing about when those pages went missing, right? Didn't they do it then? Because
she saw it at first. She saw it when the king was there. And then this whole hoopla happened. And then she sent Matthew and them back for the book.
Mm-hmm.
And when they retrieved it, the pages were gone.
Right. And there was some kind of sidebar where somebody received one of the pages. I think it was the one that ended up. Well, they got the one page. They took it back with them, right, and put it in the house. So the one that they had found, the one that they had found in the first. In I want to say the first book, in Discovery of Witches, they had found a page from the book that had been hidden in the house in New York, the haunted house that keeps trinkets and things in its maw,
and coughs them up when you need them.
Right.
Yeah. So that would make the second page. That means there's still one missing page, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Which was crazy to find out that the book was made of creatures. It's
yeah, that's very disturbing. Did you ever read any Lovecraft books?
No, I haven't.
There's I don't read them either. My husband adores them, so I know a little bit about them after being married to him for 20 years without having read them. You know how things like that go. Mm-hmm. There's a book in that mythology called the Necronomicon that is supposedly made of human skin. So it's not the first time I've run into the concept. But yeah, it was shocking and horrifying for sure.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely it was. So we're definitely going to get into that. I know more because obviously they suspect the book is still in the Bodleian in their day. Sent, and then of course they brought back a page, and then they have a page. So I'm sure eventually she's going to go back to that library and they're going to try to put all the stuff together and figure out what's going on. Because obviously they think it has to do, and as they were, going through the motions with the different people that Diana was hanging out with, they started figuring out, well, what happens? Like Diana gave her blood to this one woman who was like acting, she was studying, alchemy.
Basically. Oh, that's right. When they made that tree.
Yeah. And so she ended up giving her blood, and then Matthew was there one time, and they were just talking about what was happening, and he's like, well, what happens if I put my blood in there, basically? And so they're coming around to the fact where they're like, well, this has got to be about all of us. Yeah. So interesting. So then after that, we find out she's pregnant again.
I was surprised when she miscarried. That seemed like such a big thing, that she was pregnant and he's not supposed to be able to conceive a child or to father a child. So I was surprised when she miscarried.
Yeah. I didn't expect that. I mean, but I guess it happens to a lot of women, and you'd think that because that was supposed to not be able to happen, it would have been some kind of magical kid that could survive, But I guess maybe the process of pregnancy is the process of pregnancy, even with his super sperm or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she got pregnant again right before they left, basically. And this time, it's twins, which is super cute.
Yeah. So they came back to the present time at the very end of the book, and they go to Seven Towers, and everybody's there, right? And they have this, what do they call it? The conventicle. They have like kind of an alternate convention. It's not convention. What's the word?
Oh gosh, we went through this last time. It's called, I know what it is. I just have to figure it out. Never mind. Let's continue. And then I'll be like, I'll shout it out.
So the council, the
congregation.
There we go. Thank you. So the congregation that is supposed to oversee everybody, I mean, they're obviously going to kind of, I don't know. It seems obvious that they're going to overthrow the existing one and replace it with this more kumbaya version of everybody should get along, and find out that we're all descended from the same kind of ancestor or something. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how she brings it together in the end. I have a couple guesses, and Tamara's read the trilogy before, so we won't speculate because that way lies madness. But yeah, I mean, one of the things we talked about in the first book is that the pacing is a bit slow, and I think that I think it suits the characters, right? So Matthew is this centuries old vampire. Time really means nothing to him. He's willing to just stand there and stare at her for an hour or two before they get going on foreplay, so his sense of time is different from a human's. And she is an academic, and so she is used to long, quiet afternoons of reading and taking notes and researching and learning. And I feel like that's what this book really is this time period where they're learning about each other. They're learning about the magic in their world. They're researching and they're finding things out. And the pacing didn't bother me, but it is sort of atypically slow for an adventure book or a paranormal or urban fantasy kind of series, I think.
Yeah. Again, the pacing didn't bother me really this time. Even in the beginning, I noted in the beginning of the Discovery of Witches book that it was slower, but I didn't feel that at all from start to finish. I just felt like I was accustomed to the pacing of this author.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just fine. I didn't, it did not drag to me, but I think it was slower.
There are other books like that. I mean, Anne Rice comes to mind for me. Anne Rice is very uneven, in my opinion. Some of her books I have really loved. Some of them I thought were some of the worst books I've ever read, to be quite frank. She writes the big, chunky, epic things, but she does kind of take her time, and she builds up these relationships. And I think that if you like some of Anne Rice's better books, and you are okay with the way she builds her world and kind of dives into the characters, the heart of the characters, that's what these books remind me of a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think these books in general are more character driven than adventure plotty driven, because it's about their growth together as far as discoveries. You know what I mean? So
I agree, and that's the other thing that's I was, as a primarily a romance reader, I almost all the books I read are character driven and more character driven and less plot driven. The more plot driven it is, usually the less I like it, because they tend to be the romantic suspense and the things where, you know, danger lurks around every corner and somebody's going to get killed and there's blood and gore, and that's not my favorite. But these books are about the characters learning about each other. It's about the relationships that the characters have. It's so the scenes, the historical scenes between Philippe and Isabeau, and Elizabeth and Kit Marlowe were really wonderful in my mind. They really helped you understand the main characters through their relationship with the secondary characters. And I just really, really enjoyed that.
Oh, when you mentioned Kit, I'm like, oh my God, he is the worst.
He is the worst.
He's so jealous.
He's a baby.
So jealous of Diana. So jealous. I'm like,
and he doesn't really have a chance, right?
No, there's no chance.
He never had a chance.
No. And it's like he's delusional to think that he had a chance. So, like, dang. And he's going to get with his sister and try to take Diana out. What you think going to happen to you, dude? What do you think Matthew is going to do to you?
What do you think? Wow. Yeah.
Wasn't it? Like, oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm looking at our clock here. I think this is a great time to take a quick break. We'll hear from our sponsors. When we return, we'll finish up our conversation and give our ratings. So stay with us. Today's episode is brought to you by the Shelf Addiction merch store. Check out all the bookish t-shirts, notebooks, mugs, and more. Don't miss out on these original designs, perfect for any book nerd. Support the podcast and visit shelfaddiction.com/merch and pick up your next favorite bookish item. We are back. Of course, you guys don't forget to support the sponsors. By supporting them, you're supporting the show. So, all right, let's just jump right back on in. So one of my characters I really enjoy, we met in this book, and that is Gallowglass. We didn't even get to dig into all the things about him. He is awesome. Do you like his character?
Absolutely. He's the I don't know. He's a Scotsman, and he's kind of Viking-like, and he's just that second in command that is always there and is stalwart, and he's the Little John to Matthew's Robin Hood, and I really did enjoy him.
Yeah, he's got the rough around the edges vibe, but he's going to tell you the truth, and he's very blunt. Like, sometimes he's like, Auntie XYZ. He's telling her, it's great. I just really like him. and I know there's a lot in store for him that I think you will like. And Nicola, I think you will.
Okay.
This gets better and better over time. And he was really pivotal in like helping them get from place to place and like making arrangements. He's like the go-to guy.
Yeah, wasn't he one of the first ones that figured out that something was up with them as time walkers?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Like, you smell weird.
Yeah. He's like, you smell older than you did. Like you could, I mean, I think if you're that old and you go that far back, you should smell very different for people who use their nose.
I guess, I found that whole sniffing thing all the time a little weird, but clearly the vampires use it to their advantage. It gives them a lot of information about the people and the creatures that they're around. So,
well, everyone has their smell, right?
Right. I mean, just from a really literal perspective, if you spent the last 100 years eating 20th century foods, and I could see how your anatomy would smell different than it did in the 16th century. So
yeah, or even drinking blood from people from this century versus then.
Right. True, because he doesn't really eat that much. But.
Yeah, because people's diets are not even close to what they were before.
Right.
Yeah.
Candied violets.
Oh, goodness. The stuff they eat and just oh my God, I could not be alive back then. Thank God. Thank you, Jesus. The stuff they were eating, the queen's rotting teeth. I'm like, ew. Like, they didn't have dentists back then.
Well, dentists were people that pulled your teeth. That's pretty much all they did.
Oh my God. It sounds like torture. I'm like,
you know the story of the barber's pole, right? You know why it's a red and white stripe?
No, why?
It's like a bandage wrapped around a bloody body or limb. The red is blood. So that's where the barber's pole comes from.
Oh my God. I had no idea.
Creepy trivia.
Yikes. Okay. Well, there was another thing I wanted to bring up because in this book, they kind of adopted some kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was super exciting. I love Jack. He's so cute.
Yes. Yeah. So I did like that. And I got Matthew's point about how many of, like you can't just adopt people because you don't, she's like, no, but I can do this one.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite books is completely different from this one, but it's a post-apocalyptic thing called Dies the Fire. And it's about sort of a world where there's no electricity and there's no modern technology, and it all happens in a momentary event, like a worldwide EMP, electromagnetic pulse. And there's a scene where our band of protagonists are escaping out to the country where they're going to be able to form a community, and they're fighting off people that want their resources. And there's a scene where there's a woman that they wound, and she's got a little boy with her, and something about her just catches the eye of one of the main characters, and she's like, all right, you can come with us. She's like, we can't save everybody, but that doesn't mean we can't save anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a similar vibe. Like, we can't save them all, but this one we're going to take care of.
Yeah. I mean, because it's so sad, but it was also really cute to see how Matthew was able to connect with Jack and how they helped each other out with their nightmares, quote unquote, their own ghosts that they have to deal with. And it's like, wow, kind of seeing him in that parental role, I think also is going to prepare us to see him when he is actually a parent. So it probably won't seem so out of left field for him, this old ass guy, to be a parent.
That was really lovely. And and it's interesting that he was never able to unbend enough from the death of his son after, centuries, many centuries, to connect with a child, and that she kind of forced him into it. And I don't think that was her motive. I don't think she meant to be like, okay, this is going to be your practice kid, right?
Right.
But it had that effect, and I think it was quite wonderful.
Yeah, it was. I really liked those scenes, like when they had like little events, and they would, basically they started out with, okay, you guys are going to be a part of our household. You'll have these little jobs. And then
You'll
at
be
some
our
point,
servants.
right. And at some point they're like, let's just throw out the pretense. These kids having fun. We're doing stuff. We're buying them stuff. Like, yeah. They're family. They're not servants.
Yeah. But they didn't take him back with them into the future.
They did. They couldn't. They could not. And they did not. But Diana did some things to try to ensure that they would be looked out for.
Yeah. What did you think
about? Oh, Jinx.
I bet we're thinking of the same person too.
Yeah.
The vampire pope or whatever.
Yeah. Like the head of the city. I don't know. He thinks he runs everything and runs everybody. I wasn't sure what to make of his character except to be like a pain in the ass. But I did think that was very strange at the end, that he was asking for Diana's blood in exchange to take care of, look out for those kids. And I'm like, I mean, he thought he was like their father. Like he thought he was everyone's father. It's very weird and creepy.
It was, and I wonder how much of it was an allusion to sort of the Catholicism with the, take of my blood, kind of the communion ritual. So that's what it made me think of a little bit, only weirder, right? So,
yeah, and in the end there, he wanted her blood, not the other way around.
Yeah, so there's this whole thread running through, and maybe I'm just reading things too fast and not thinking about them enough, but there's the thing where if the vampire gives you his blood, then you become vulnerable in specific ways, right? Because there was that thing in the first book where I think it was Jillian was asking, or maybe it was one of the aunts, Emily or Sarah was asking Swiss cheese brain today was asking the main character, are you sure he never gave you any of his blood? Are you sure? Were there any moments in time when he might have just a drop? So it seems like and there's a whole thing about Gilbert giving blood to the witch to keep her compliant. So it seemed less like you were kind of expecting, why can't I remember his name? The preacher of London guy's name, to want, Diane to take his blood. And, but that's not what he wanted. So I don't quite understand what it means for a vampire to have some of your blood. Like what bond does that create?
Well, he did say something about, like, if you're ever here again, I'll be able to find you or something. I'll know you're here. So I wonder if that means like you're kind of traceable, or they can find you better if they have your blood. I mean, that's what I took from it. Like, but she also whispered some words as well that Goody told her that she thinks, and I guess her and her fire drake kind of protected her baby at the time. She thought it was just a baby,
right?
From whatever she gave him. It was weird. It was like she said some words, gave him the blood, said some other words, and then she said, "Well, thank you, Goody, for telling me." But she didn't explain really what she blocked.
Well, she made this deal with him that was clever, right? So a deal with the devil kind of thing. Like normally he takes blood from the jugular and has to, and all this like kind of quasi-sexual kind of interaction. She's like, no, you can have one drop and you're not touching me. And he's like, okay. And then she spells the blood a little bit between the time that it leaves, falls out of her vein, as it's falling through the air, she like dries it up and does something to it. So she meets the letter of the bargain, but he doesn't get what he wanted from it.
Yeah. He got literally one drop. That was it.
Yeah. But even that drop wasn't what he was expecting, because it was spelled before he consumed it. So
when she said the spell, I was like, I wonder if she could like turn it into like an ice pick and stab him to death with it.
Well, she doesn't want that though.
No, she wants him to look out for.
You're thinking of Kate Daniels. So Kate Daniels does that with her blood, right? She makes weapons out of it.
Oh, okay. I learned that. That's new to me. Okay.
Oh, did you not? Have you not read Ilona Andrews?
That was the one where I started reading, and I thought the first book was so boring, I gave up. But I need to go back and try again. First book was bad. The second book was mediocre, but the rest of them are pretty awesome. Okay, so when I have some time, I got to go back, because I keep hearing that series keeps coming up. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to come back around and try.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I did the same thing, and I would not have gone back, but a bunch of people told me that I really should, including Mel Jean Brooke, who's an author that I really love, and she and Ilona Andrews were kind of back in the day. I don't, when there were a lot of online interactions, they were almost critique partners, I think. So, anyway. And the thing about being traceable was that was one of the things that J.R. Ward did with her vampires, right? So if you had drank, like early on, Vicious drank some of Butch's blood, or
that's right.
No, he had Butch drink some of his blood so that he could then find Butch. So
was that before Butch was turned?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was considered very dangerous. I never really said why, but that was when they were having their bromance in the pit.
Oh my God, I swear to God, everyone wanted something to happen between them two, but that's not the route they went. Anywho, look, every time it goes back to J.R. Ward, somehow, some way we go back.
We are talking about vampires, so I feel like it's a little less random than it usually is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm not quite. I feel like I need to go back and reread. Like I've missed parts of these books, and maybe I did because in the first book I sped through it pretty fast. I waited too long to start it, and I was really kind of down to the wire to get through it all in time to do our podcast. So I may have missed something about the blood in there, but so. Love to hear from listeners. Like, what did you take away from the bond between the two? If the vampire drinks the blood of someone else, what's the bond there?
Yeah, I mean, will we even see him again? Who knows? I mean,
who knows?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
Okay. It's gonna be one of those things where if I read it, I'll be like, oh yeah.
The whole point was for him to be taking care of Jack primarily, and I think not to harm the girl, right? And I forget her name, but she was.
He considered him a purse already, so
yes. So she knew that when she was gone, this guy was going to have like power over those two, and she wanted to make sure that they were protected. So she knew she had to make some kind of deal with him.
Yeah, and she had to, because, I mean, honestly, she could not. I mean, she wasn't even sure. Like, she learned from Goody and the other witches how to, like, do this nodding thing, which is something she wasn't doing before, to kind of, like, build her spell. So she wasn't even sure she could get them all back while she was pregnant, didn't have any charms. You know, she was kind of already questioning herself. There's no way she could have drugged back 2 kids with her. That's just, that would have been too much, I think, to pull off. In her training, she was still really early in her training. She learned a lot fast, but she's got a long way.
Once she went down the right path, right? When she stopped trying to learn other people's spells and started learning how to weave instead. that was the turning point for her.
Yeah, definitely. And she started using magic a lot in that book. Once she figured out what she was doing, like that one scene, Matthew could not find his like britches or some crap he couldn't find.
The red hose.
His red hose. And she's like, don't wear those red hose, but fine, I'll help you find them.
It was like, I want to be noticed. I thought that was a funny scene anyway, but yeah.
It was. She's like, you'll be noticed without them.
Right.
You like
You're like
clown.
6'7". What are you talking about?
Right. You do not need red hose. And I think that is so crazy that you and your man are wearing hosiery together. Like, oh my God. Lord,
options were limited in those days, right?
Yes, they were. And then also one last point I guess I wanted to just touch on, because we don't know what happened. We don't know barely anything except Emily died.
Yeah, that was so sad. Like that was a little bit of the cliffhanger. Like I think there's a third book, so we all kind of assume they're going to make it back to the present in Seven Towers, and there's going to be some big showdown with the Chronicles conventioners.
Oh, congregation.
Thank you. I'm going to just write that down and stick it up on the congregation. Because there's
the conventicle and then I just said it. Oh my God, congregation. Good Lord.
Congregation. Yeah. So I'm going to have to write down all the C words up there so I can get it right. But that's what I'm presuming for book 3, mm-hmm. And that her children have something to do with it. So with the new rules. So I think there's going to be new rules for the creatures of the world. So,
well, I mean, they got back and there was a baby already there, a little baby witch.
Yeah. That was born to cute. Demons.
Yes. Baby witch born to demons. And now they about to have some twins born to a witch and a vampire. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a whole lot of, we have to change their minds things going on clearly, because otherwise they'll be hunted, and we don't have more than one book. So,
so you can kind of figure out, you can
make something. Yeah.
Put some parameters around what probably is going to happen in book 3.
Yeah. So. You can make some intelligent guesses based on there's only one more book.
And Gallowglass goes back to France, and he has refused to do that for years and years.
Yeah. So it's like, wow. So Gallowglass is lived this whole time, all, knowing, he's like, I knew her then. He even watched her grow up.
Yeah. That was sweet. That was
Isn't
sweet.
it? So it's like, wow. So it's like he knew her as an adult, but then here he is like trying to look out and help this little kid, teenager, mm-hmm. young adult, Mm-hmm. It's like, wow. Such a good person. He didn't have to do that.
No, and Matthew didn't ask him to.
No.
I would love for him to get a novella or a book of his own, like a standalone, just him finding a happily ever after, because I like a romance.
I know. He deserves a happily ever after. He seems like a good character. So
yeah, I mean, there's a romance throughout this between Matthew and Diana, of course, but Harkness does not strike me as a romance writer.
No,
primarily. I think we talked about this last time. So
yeah, she definitely isn't.
So I don't expect that for Gallowglass, but I would love it.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so I think, there's so much more, as always. There always is more, especially with books that are almost 600 pages. But I think we got like the best parts, the juiciest parts.
So yeah.
So let's rate the thing. Let's rate our book. Would you like to go first?
Sure. I came into it thinking 4, but honestly, I think this is closer to a 5 for me. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the way the magic developed and the way the characters developed. So I'm leaning towards 5.
This is a big turnaround for you. You were like, last time, you were like, it depends on how the second book goes.
Well,
I love it.
Yeah. And I think I would have liked the first one better if I hadn't had to rush through it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to rate it a 4, a strong 4. I really liked a lot of things about this book. It held up for me like it did the first time around. I had no issues with pacing. I just really enjoyed those characters. And I don't know. And I did listen to part of this on audio. Jennifer Akita did excellent as always. Although I did speed her up. She's too slow of a reader for me at regular pace. I listened to her at like 1.75, almost 2.
Wow.
Because her pacing is way too slow to listen regularly. But if you speed her up, just drops right into place for me.
It's funny how that works with audiobooks.
Yeah, so I got to do a little reading, a little listening, and it just double timed me to the finish line. So I love that.
Awesome.
Okay, so I guess that's it. And of course, next time we'll be back with the finale of the trilogy, The Book of Life. And we're going to have a good time talking about how all of this comes to an end. And of course, we missed Casey today, but she will be back with us soon enough. So if you missed her as well, she'll be back with us in a couple episodes. And and as always, you can find us on Facebook and Shelf Addiction Official or on our social media. Anything else you'd like to add, Nicola?
I don't think so. I hope you guys are reading along and would love to hear your thoughts on some of the things we touched on.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks for joining us. Definitely reach out to us and we'll catch you in the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Bye, guys.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review, or like this episode on your favorite podcast player. It seems so simple, but it really helps me out. You can share this podcast with other book nerd friends or on your favorite social media space. You can also join the Shelf Addiction Patreon family. For as little as $2 a month, you will help us produce even more awesome content for your ears. You can also consider joining the Shelf Addiction Official Facebook group, where we talk all things bookish and more in a safe space. The Shelf Addiction Podcast is a part of the Nerdy Maven Network. You can also reach us via email at info@shelfaddiction.com. Thank you for listening.